Hello, everybody, and welcome to another boggy, creepy day on the Michael and Patty Show, looking out at the Charlottetown Yacht Club. It's kind of misty and dreary and cloudy, and it's all Washington, D.C.'s fault, because this is where this weather system all started. Good morning, Patty.
Good morning, Michael.
And how are you today?
I am good, and it is a really foggy day here on the water. You can't see Stratford from the Charlottetown Yacht Club, which usually we're very easily able to see the land over there. But yes, it is still June, which is really nice, and nice that we are at least in the teens for weather temperatures. So I'm not going to complain.
Well, that's good. We're into episode 140. 140. Who would believe that we'd make it to 140 episodes? If you're new to the show, welcome. Put this episode on pause, go back to episode 1, listen to the first 139 first, and then please rejoin us.
Yes, or you can become a member of the Michael and Patty podcast, Moving to Prince Edward Island Facebook group. It's a private group, and it will have a summary of every single episode, so you can kind of cherry pick the ones that are most relevant to you as well.
So let's get into a topic which wasn't actually on the agenda for today, but it's something we had thought about or discussed over the weekend in preparation for this show. I shouldn't use preparation because there's no preparation going into it.
Yeah, not really.
It was a topic, and the topic was basically meant for people that are younger, I guess older, doesn't really matter, that are renting, and people that have money in the bank, which for your knowledge is probably losing between 1.5 and 4% per year because of inflation, but it's in the bank and you feel safe. And your parents, assuming they're still alive, are telling you to go out and buy a house. Why are you renting? And then what happens is you consult your friends. All your friends are renting in this particular situation. Specifically, this person was in her 20s, had the money to buy a house, but her friends all told her, don't buy a house. Oh, you're going to have to take care of the roof, and what happens if the windows go, and the basement might be leaking, and you need a new driveway. It was nothing but endless stories of earth-shattering moments and catastrophe. So what did she do? She didn't buy a house. Now that she's over 30 years old, she wants to buy a house. Well, that same house that she could have bought with $2,015 for a house probably for $150,000 or so, now it's going to cost her $750,000 because we went through the COVID boom here in Atlantic Canada. So now that amount of money, which is depreciated because she didn't even bother investing it into anything, including say an S&P index fund or anything, sat there, went down in value, real estate went up in value astronomically, and now she has to settle for something that wasn't as nice or in the same price range as what she could have bought before the big boom with $2015 because she listened to her friends. And why did her friends tell her to keep renting?
Probably because, one, ignorance. Because her friends were not properly informed, in my opinion, I feel that she followed the crowd. She listened to them, unfortunately, because their thought process was renting is easier. If there's an issue with the toilet, you just call the landlord. If there's an issue with the roof or a repair that needs to be done, well, the landlord has to do it. So in their opinion, that seemed like the smart route to not have to do these repairs that are part of home ownership versus making the purchase, putting it into a home, which we're going to need anyways. We all need some form of shelter. And then having the opportunity, because we don't know what lies ahead, to hopefully create some equity in the home, which at the time when this person's friends were advising and they were listening to them, and perhaps not people that are older, because as you know, Michael, older people don't know anything. We are slowly apparently losing our faculties and are out of touch with reality for perhaps in this situation, the younger generation. So if you do have somebody that is trying to help advise you, yes, do your own due diligence. yes, make sure that you speak to people that are at the level or above where you see yourself. So at home ownership, speak to other homeowners. What is their advice? Don't speak to people who are currently renting and settling at that renting level, because they're only going to tell you or inform you to stay where they're at, because in their minds, that's why they're there, because that makes the most amount of sense.
It doesn't make the most amount of sense to them, in my opinion. They don't have the money to buy a house. That's why they're renting, and they want to keep this young lady at the same level that they are, because they don't want to see her going out and buying a house for 150 and then 11, 12 years later it's worth 750. They want her to stay at that same level.
Yeah, because again, in their head, it's their way of justifying why they are where they're at, because they're edifying it by saying it's because I don't want to do repairs. So that's why the advice, Michael, and you're probably right in some ways, it's not necessarily advice that they're giving outward because they feel it's the best advice for this person. It's them justifying their decision or where they are right now. I'm not renting or I'm not buying a house, even though whether they do or do not have the funds to do this purchase, but they're kind of edifying themselves and saying, I don't buy a house because it doesn't make sense. Whereas really it's, I'm not buying a house because I don't have the money, but in order for you not to judge me, I'm not buying the house because I don't have the money. But to you, my spiel is going to be, oh, you've got all these expenses. This makes more sense. So unfortunately for this situation, because it was about 10 years ago or so that this young buyer was in a financial position to be able to purchase a home, plus still pay for an education, and that they made the choice. And now, yes, with the depreciation of money and all of that stuff.
Devaluation.
The devaluation, absolutely.
So all you have left after 11 years is a bunch of rent receipts that actually, and ironically enough, add up to probably more than you had in the bank originally to buy a house. So basically, you've tossed all that money away. So if you are young, your friends are telling you to rent rather than buy, talk to your friends that have bought houses. If you don't have any friends that have bought houses and are young, find some. Post an ad.
Yeah, find people that are where you would like to be and ask how they got there. Like you do that in anything. It's not just home ownership. It's also, you become the people that you surround yourself with. So just be mindful of that.
It's Business 101, which brings us to our next topic, which I'm going to introduce and you can cover. If you're looking for a house and you're looking for maximum appreciation, or maybe you're going to flip it out or whatever the case may it be today or 10 years from now, look for the crappiest house in the best neighborhood. Do not buy ever the best house in the worst neighborhood, because the location is going to drag that value down and its sellability. And we know that for facts because we've had people. For instance, we had a house in Summerside years ago, which was completely overbuilt. It was like a A++ house in a C-, neighborhood, and they couldn't give that house away. So when you're looking for a house, you're looking for something substantive or something unsubstantive. Am I using that word right?
I don't know. I'm stuck on your minus. I didn't realize it. We have A, B, C grade locations.
This was a bad neighborhood, and the further you went down this street, the worse it got, and this house was right at the end of the street.
Which made it the C-.
Which made it C-. But you're going to buy the smallest, ugliest house on the street. That's where you're going to see the most evaluation, because the three most important things about real estate are what?
Location.
And they will drag a house value up or down, as well as the sellability. Anything to add?
Yeah. And you do want to be mindful if you buy a property, which I've come across this, and ironically enough, it was also in a Summerside neighborhood, but this particular property owner in, I'd say, a C+ location ended up putting in like marble floors, and they completely upgraded this home beyond the level in which the average home price or even the highest price that a property had gone for in that area, and then expected to receive almost double the average price, whereas you're still in the same location. Perhaps if you picked that property up and moved it into a better or where homes were of equal, substantial, I guess, value, it may have held its value. But because you put all these upgrades and it had gold finishes and it was a piece of art, I will give them that, but they upgraded for themselves clearly. And unless they find somebody that sees that home through their eyes, it sat for years. I was the listing agent on this. I was the first listing agent in, which is a whole other topic, but I was the first listing agent in, and I did my market evaluation and I told them where, again, the highest price in this area and all of that. However, they were insistent, and I thought, okay, well, if I show my value, provide the service, I'm in this for the long haul with them. No, they ended up tossing me aside because they said I couldn't sell it for the inflated price at this, C grade location area. And it was on the market it was at least 5 years. I didn't even know if it sold because I gave up checking on this house. I became so tired of just, it's back on with agent number 4 now. Somebody else is going to end up just bringing that miracle agent, miracle buyer to pay the inflated price.
I can hear it now, them saying, Patty, what are you doing to market our property? How come it hasn't sold? And Patty, and I'm thinking the same thing, hello? Anybody home?
Yeah, the market is talking to them the whole time, screaming at them with no showings, and yet it was my fault.
It always is. That's why I never want to be the first listing agent in an overpriced listing. You always want to be the second or third after they've slipped into reality zone and realized that their $20,000 or $30,000 floor is not going to increase the value of the house by 300%.
Yeah, and I will just make one note. I know on a previous episode and not too long ago, we were talking about agents buying listings. Well, it's not always the case when you do. So if you're a buyer listening to this, always ask for a reverse CMA. Always ask to justify the price because sometimes it's not always the agent that is, and I'm putting in quotations, buying the listing. Sometimes it is the seller that has such an inflated price. And again, unless they have a property or a buyer that sees the property through their same eyes, please don't end up overpaying. I mean, unless it's the property of your dreams and the location and setting that you have always wanted, or family land. I've sold properties because it was part of their great-grandfather's land many, many, many decades ago. And they just had to own it and they didn't care what the price was. They just wanted it back in the family. So there's always those odd situations. But yes, at the end of the day, be mindful of the finishes you put in. Don't buy the most expensive home if you can avoid it, because you may end up being the one that takes the loss at the end of the day.
What are the best things that somebody can do to make their house more attractive, but at the same token, they're the least expensive?
Paint, declutter, and just
clean, declutter, and paint.
Yes, yeah. There was a house that I just showed probably a week ago, and it has a nice floor plan. It had a really nice flow to it. However, it was dirty, like beyond dirty. It looked like they were doing like a doggy daycare, and they had like 50 dogs running through this house, and the floors, I didn't even know if they had a shine to them. There was just such a film on them. The kitchen counters, I don't know if they prepare their food on them, but it wasn't a good showing. My clients felt really disappointed because the pictures did not, obviously, and I mean, kudos to the agent to some degree, because it didn't look as tired and as dirty in the photos, but what a disappointment. So clean, declutter, and paint can go so far in presenting a property.
Yes, and forget about the granite countertops, the marble floors, and the brass railings, because they typically are not going to add to the value of the house. Years ago, just to get into a side story, if I may, because we know we have a million of those, I had a house listed where there was grime marks around all the knobs on the oven because the dirt, like it had never been cleaned, and all the light switches had this shadow, almost a cloud around them of grime. And the basement Well, you don't even want to talk about the basement, because when I showed this house, they said, you can go into the basement at your own risk. I will be outside. It was that bad and that dirty. That's exceptional, but you do get that sort of stuff, and there's no excuse for that. We can't do any more side
All I was
stories.
going to say is that particular home that I went through that was really, really dirty, they even had the showing instructions were to take your shoes off. And so I took mine off, and I always try to make sure that if I'm wearing my sandals for the day that I bring little sockets. But my clients took off their shoes. They proceeded to walk into the living room area because it was a bit of an open concept space. And they turned around and went back to the door. And they said, if we're not allowed to have our shoes on, we're not walking through this place because we just don't want to walk through this. So I did go through the entire home, but I couldn't believe they actually instructed us to take our shoes off.
Years ago, I knew an agent, and he used to have a saying. You'd ask him what the house was like, and he would tell you, it is so dirty, you'll want to wipe your feet before you leave, so you don't get the outside contaminated.
It's unfortunate.
Moving along. I don't know if this is a culture in certain markets. I know it's evident in certain parts of the island, which I'm not going to address specifically. But this asking an agent what they're going to take for the house. So I call you up. You have a house listed. Let's just say it's on for $162,000.
Okay.
You're the listing agent. I'm the buyer's agent. And I say to you, there's nothing wrong with me asking this question. I'm just basically trying to determine how stupid you are and who you're representing, whether you're representing your seller or yourself looking for a commission check. I say to you, Patty, will they take $155,000?
On $162,000. And I just before I give you my little scripted answer to that, it's a very good point that you've just made, is when an agent negotiates on their seller's behalf without their consent and permission, who are they negotiating for? Are they negotiating for the seller? Because their job, their fiduciary obligation and responsibility and what they agreed to was to get the client, or they should have, agree to get the client the most amount of money with hopefully the least amount of hassles and, conditions and that. But when you start as an agent, a listing agent, negotiating on your client's behalf, and they're not aware of it, and you're doing like a little side deal back and forth, that's you negotiating to get paid. So my scripted answer to you, Michael, is I appreciate that it sounds like, is this your client's offer or what they're considering coming in at? And if so...
Let me answer that.
Sure.
That's a good question, Patty. I heard from another agent's friend's uncle brother's cousin that lives down the street that's also a real estate agent that these people actually already considered an offer of $155,000 on 162 and they accepted it. That's why I'm asking, are they still willing to discount the price on the house? Because it fell apart because of a home inspection.
I am not sure where you're getting all the information from, because that's quite the stream thread of communication. And I don't know if you've ever played the game telephone as a child. However, by the time you get around the circle, the story is a little bit distorted and not at all even close to what the original story or message was. So here's my scripted answer. I do not negotiate on my client's behalf without their consent and permission. If your client would like to put their offer in writing on paper, I would be more than happy to present that to my seller, and they can, at the end of the day, decide how they would like to proceed with your client's offer. I can pretty much do that in my sleep. I do not, and if a seller client of mine wanted to test me and see if that's what I would say, that is my scripted answer. So perhaps just a little planted seed, and it doesn't matter where you are. And again, our real estate's all pretty much consistent here in North America. If you want to test your agent, what are they saying? Go ahead. Get somebody to test them and see if they start negotiating, because they shouldn't do that. They should just, again, say the same scripted answer. I don't negotiate on my client's behalf without their consent and permission. And that's what I would answer. And then that calls you out, Michael. If you're serious, or your buyer clients are serious with their $155,000 offer, they'll put it in writing and my clients can make the decision at the end of the day, not me, because I'm not worried about getting paid until my clients are happy and I've fulfilled my services.
And that's the way it should be. But recently, in certain parts of the island, I'm getting this, the old, psst, what will they really take so we can put it on paper and get this deal done so we can get paid? And that's not how things are to work. The things that are supposed to work is the listing agent supposed to work for the seller, unless advised otherwise by the seller. And the seller says, give my house away for whatever you want, which never happened to me, probably hasn't happened to you. They typically want the most amount of money, the least amount of time, with the least amount of aggravation. But you do get a certain percentile agents, and I don't know what's going on here, like if they don't have the cognitive abilities to figure this out, but I represent the seller. I don't have to represent you. I'm not here to cut a commission check and sell the house for $100,000 less than it's worth because I want to get paid. My job is to fight hard to get the vendor as much amount of money in a contract that they find desirable. Yes. My objective is not to become your friend and put a deal together at a 20% discount because we had a conversation on the side we shouldn't have been having.
Yes, I agree.
And the other thing is I get agents pressing me. What happens when they say this? Patty, tell me what the bottom line is. I get that too. Give me their bottom line. We don't want to go back and forth. Just tell me what they take. They've already put in a shitty offer. Okay? Yeah. They've already put an offer in for 20% less of list, which was stupid, with a pile of conditions. Plus they had to sell their house. And then the agent's saying to me, what will they take? What's their bottom line? Again, are you not plugged in here? Did you not get any training? Do you not even understand what your capacity is? I get it. You're a buyer's agent. You can ask these questions. I should not be answering them.
Yeah, and that's so... Okay, there's two things I just wanted to say there. And it's not that they're not plugged in. Like you said, they can ask the question. This goes back on to the listing agent and how they respond. A buyer's agent should be trying to collect as much information as they can to leverage and get the property at the best price for their client. The listing agent should have a very tight script and not negotiate, again, without their client's consent and permission. However, it's not just buyer's agents that ask these questions, and it's fine if you ask it and then respect the answer. The problem lies is when the agent keeps pressing and keeps pushing and starts to now dismiss the listing. Well, you and I both know this is priced too high. Where did this number come from? Again, I'm not going to entertain that conversation because I know you're trying to posture and position your clients. So respect the process, respect the professionalism. And if you're a buyer, because I also get buyers that play this game on the phone. I had taken a call from a gentleman who drove by a sign and he ended up sitting there when he asked what the price was. He didn't ask anything with regards to, what the condition is. He doesn't know what this home looks like. And the home is in sync with the rest of the values within this subdivision that the home is in. But he starts laughing at me and saying that I think he called me, I was in cuckoo land, and saying, would the sellers consider this, which was about $200,000. He goes, well, I'm not paying a penny more than that. And that's fine. I didn't get upset or anything. I just went, I appreciate the input in that. And I said, if there's no other questions in that, I said, obviously this property is probably not the one for you then. And wished him a great day. So just, again, maintain your level of professionalism in the service that you agreed to sign up for. And if you're a buyer's agent and you're on a bit of a fishing expedition, no pun intended here, being on the island in PEI and looking at a bunch of boats, just, again, respect the professionalism of the listing agent if they refuse to get into a conversation and give you more than they should be.
So let's just assume I'm the listing agent and you say to me, exactly what you said. We both know this is overpriced. The first thing I'm thinking in my head is all of a sudden Patty seems to know it's going through my head because that wasn't it. In fact, I, as the listing agent, I'm armed. I'm armed with information and knowledge. And the information and knowledge I have for Patty in this particular case is I've done my due diligence. I've looked at and I've had Claude AI look at every single listing that's sold in the last 3 years.
Yes.
In the area. And there's nothing that compares to this property. This property has more acreage, it has more outbuildings, it's newer, it's fresher, it has the best builder on the island. It's in an area where you can't buy land. It has impeccable views. There's absolutely nothing that compares to this house. So be it for you to say it's overpriced. If anything, you should be making an offer over asking, because this is such an incredible opportunity. That's how it's to be presented, not two agents going back and forth and saying, what do you think they'll take for it? And I said to this agent, I said, so why are we negotiating with ourselves? What are you guys willing to pay? Since you're talking on behalf of your purchaser that you probably haven't even conversed with, and these are numbers you're making up, guessing what your purchaser's thinking. So they give me a number which is still a lowball number, but at least I'm not negotiating with myself, because the first person, and I've said this to agents, to give a number, what happens to their leverage?
They lose it.
They lose all their leverage, because if I give a number, let's just say it's a $400,000 house, and I say, well, the vendors might do 300, and then the purchaser's thinking 375, I've just lost 75 grand by negotiating with myself. And that plays true with everything. If I'm looking at a car and the guy says, I consider selling it, I don't say to him, I'll give you 50 grand for it. I say, so what do you want for it? And then if I'm interested, I'm going to build a case to drive that number down in the form of saleable or sold comparables.
Absolutely. And the number is 125,000 in your example, just in case anyone's a math person and it's just irritating them listening. So you had used an example 400 and you said 300 and they came in at 275. Yes, it's a bad negotiation. You shouldn't be throwing out any numbers. And as a listing agent, and I think we beat this topic to death, you should always be trying, like you always say, Michael, to get at or above, not always below the list price. You should always be trying to service and represent your client. Just be mindful of it. Be a professional. Show your value. Show our value in this industry, that we are worth what our services are and what you charge for them, because we do bring so much value to the whole transaction.
And how do we get more than asking price for a house? Forgetting about getting into multiples and putting a ridiculously low price on the house to generate multiples, which has been done a lot during COVID. But we have a house that we want to get over ask for. How can we do that?
With additional chattels?
Well, yeah, what we need leverage.
Correct.
So a lot of listing agents, when the seller says, well, what about the fridge, stove, washer, dryer, the ride-on lawnmower, the pool table, the big screen TV, and my wife? A lot of them, the listing agents just say, include everything, right? So what are they doing? They're getting rid of all the leverage they have. So if a purchaser comes along, and what are they going to ask for? They're going to say, if it's a first-time home buyer in the low end, they're definitely going to want the appliances. If it's a high-end home and it's got high-end appliances, they're definitely want the appliances. Maybe not necessarily the wife. But it gives them leverage. So now I can say, Patty, I'm glad you asked that question.
Yes, chattels and above, that's a whole other conversation.
But what do I say? If you come in with a full price or better offer, I'm sure the vendors may consider throwing in or including the bolt-ons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I don't think you're very interested in this subject, so we're moving along and you can do everything.
No, let's keep going.
Many times in the past, I have had buyers come to me and come to other agents and say, I'm looking for XYZ, and I'm willing to pay up to D. In other words, I'm looking for a waterfront home. It has to be in a white sandy beach with 30 acres, and it has to be 15 minutes to Charlottetown or Summerside. I'm willing to pay up to $300K. And I have seen countless agents looking for these properties, which typically do not exist unless they're a desperate sale, which very rarely happens. But I find, and I don't know about you, a lot of times these buyers have a lot more money to spend, and they feel better if you just tell them right off the bat, this amount of money is not going to buy what you're looking for. And this actually happened to me. I was looking for, and you remember this, something in Malibu.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I was short by about $50 million. So I had the agent, which was from Toronto, set up a search for up to $2 million US in Malibu. And nothing came up. He reached out to me, I don't know, 3 months later. He said, well, are you still looking? I said, oh, I am, but nothing's coming up. And it was kind of funny because he looked at the budget and he said, we don't really cater to that market. Which was a nice way of saying, get back to me when you have an extra $48 million to spend. I just found that interesting. But I do find agents, particularly in our market, will go out of their way to try to find them something that just isn't in that price category. And I've worked with these people and ended up selling them properties that were 10 times more expensive because I wasn't willing to play the game of trying to find something that doesn't exist. Thoughts?
It's okay to say, so from a buyer's point of view, it's okay to say, this is what ideally I would like to get. And it's okay as the buyer's agent to say, well, I can appreciate what you would ideally like to get. However, your wish list, your budget isn't high enough. So, this is what you can afford with X amount of dollars, and send them some properties. Don't spend, because I've seen this so many times, where they're trying to get this square peg and put it into a round hole, and they're desperate to find, because they feel like, I got a buyer. I'm going to try to find them what they're looking for, which is a waterfront property and a home that's like 5 years old. And, it's year-round access for $500,000. And you're probably not going to find it, which is why in previous episodes we talked about people traversing towards getting cottage properties that may be waterfront or water view that are not on necessarily a year-round road and probably need a little bit of work and to winterize it, because they can still fit that into their budget and make it what they want. It's okay to tell your buyer client that there's a disconnect between what their wish list is and what their budget is. And it's okay to show them the two scenarios, what your wish list looks like based on the area that you want the property in. This is what you can expect to pay based on your budget, and trying to keep a few things from your wish list. This is what you can expect to view and see. It's education. Just be honest with them. Don't go down the spiraling hole. You'll only frustrate the buyer. You're only going to be a buyer's agent that ends up putting in 10, 20, 30 hours looking for something that's completely disconnected from reality. So take the two scenarios. One's their wish list, one's their price, and just educate them. It's okay to do that. That's what the buyer would probably prefer, to save a lot of time.
Patty, I spent a lot of time driving around the island, maybe not so much since gas is now over $2 a liter or thereabouts. And I pass a lot of signage, and I can't read it. In fact, there's been signage where you and I have actually had to stop, pull into the parking lot, walk up to the sign just to read it to see, is this a for sale sign? Is it for property management, Airbnb? Are they selling a dog? Are they running a hair salon? Like, what is this signage about? Which reminds me about a book I read many years ago. The whole book, and this is how hard I am up for reading material, was on signage.
Okay.
And the point being, if you can't read it at 50 or 60 kilometers an hour, don't put it on the sign. And if you're in real estate, take your ginormous ego, which you have a picture of on your sign, by the way, and make your sign about selling the property, not about you. And the other thing, and I said this to Patty earlier, is if you're a member of a brand, and this brand has spent 200 years building that brand, in one instance in Canada, we do have one brand that's done that, others been decades, take advantage of that brand. That brand should be equitable or in about the same size as your name, because you're also trying to build up your own name. But do not minimize the brand or change the colors to purple, because purple is your favorite color and your car is purple and your hair is purple and your fingernails are purple and everything in your life is purple, including your business cards and your signage, which has nothing to do with having a professional image, utilizing that brand that's been developed over decades or a century. Your name is your next item. For sale is always a good thing to have on a sign if it's for sale.
Yes.
And do not turn your sign into I don't know what it is. It looks like a 5-page brochure on the property. Nobody can read this. So the benefit of that sign is zero. It's been completely negated.
Yeah. You have approximately 3 seconds when you drive by a sign to capture at least one piece of information. And typically, the piece of information that somebody is going to grasp is the first, it's for sale. The second is, who do I call? Well, as you can just, again, 3 seconds. Okay, this is a for sale sign. Who do I call? They may not, in that last half a second, be able to actually record or register your name unless it is something simple like Bob Smith. They're not going to capture that. But they will capture, especially if you're with a brand, the logo, the color of the logo. So don't be changing brands, especially if it's one that's been in the business for decades. Don't go changing the colors and feeling like, well, this is my little spin on it, because you're going to lose that 3 second. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to call just some random real estate office.
Joe Smith.
Yeah, because you didn't capture that inquiry, because your sign, whether it was ego and your name, because you think you're Elvis or something, they're not going to remember. The first thing they're registering is this is a for sale sign. I'll tell you a funny story, Michael. There was a property in Charlottetown, and my whole office, we were all in on this fun little, it was almost frustrating and it just became a game. So different agents in my office who do frequent and drive down this road, there was a sign, and we couldn't determine whether it was a for sale sign. We couldn't see anyone's name. We couldn't see any company's logo, but it really looked like a for sale sign. So is this somebody doing manicures in their home or selling some items? So a few of us would drive by from time to time, and we would again go, did you drive by that sign yet and pick out who it is? Because I think it's a for sale sign. We couldn't find the property on the MLS because obviously that would be the next smart thing for us to do, but we couldn't find it. So we continued to just, because it's set back, so to get the civic number, and it's in a bit of an area that had other commercial buildings and stuff. So, to sit there and spend all this time, which then just defeated the game because it was like almost cheating. We wanted to see how slow we could go by and see if we could capture another little nugget from this sign to find out what it was even about. And it turned out it was a for sale sign on a property that was expired, was no longer on the market, but the sign stayed up well past, which is not something we're allowed to do. However, there was no indication. It had no for sale. It had no company brand. It was some odd, like Dijon mustard, yellowy color, and it wasn't Century 21. Your signs, the very fact that there was an office of real estate agents trying to figure out what the heck this sign was all about, should tell you, if I drive by and I don't know what it's about, either is the consumer. For sale, brand logo, if you can, because again, there's usually only a few seconds, have your name on it, yes, but the company's logo should be prominent, and that's just to make sure at the very least your office gets the phone call on that property.
Patty, I'm going to give you a topic, and we're going to see how fast you can run through this. This was actually sent to me by the Canadian Real Estate Association, which I believe you can subscribe to their newsletter. It does have some interesting tidbits on real estate. Would you agree or strongly agree?
I would agree.
So this particular topic is 5 common property title issues that you may run into. And I've attached the sheet, and you're going to go through it in under 30 seconds starting now.
Okay. So the first thing is existing loans.
Liens.
Yes, liens, but loans that you never paid off, so someone's registered a lien on your property and it shows up on title. that as a listing agent, because I had this discussion with another real estate agent that said they didn't realize they were allowed to go in and check these items on the registry because we have, obviously it's public information, but we have as realtors paid access to this. So you're looking for any mechanics liens on if there's still a mortgage registered. You're looking for encroachment issues. Sometimes a neighbor's fence might be a few inches over the property line. There might be some sort of encroachment agreement in place on the property. Or the flip of that is as you're looking and you're aligning that perhaps with the ortho map or the mapping on the property and see that it looks like there's a discrepancy, you can pull the deed and the Schedule A, which is the written version of the survey, to see what they're referencing and if there is any encroachment issues. The third is title fraud. Sometimes lawyers find red flags like forged or stolen documents that are used to commit title fraud without the property owner's knowledge. I would just say, and I've come across this actually twice this year in 2026, where there were documents registered on title for a property that had nothing to do with the subject property. So you want to make sure that, again, as a realtor, when you are about to list a property, you pull the registry, you check these documents, you do your own little, it's like a mini title search so that you can have the conversation quite, as long as they're the documents, they're after 1998, 97 in there. Those documents we can typically access. Anything before that, we do have to go to the registry's office to be able to pull those. But at least it allows you to have those conversations. And both situations, my sellers were able to get ahead of it and were able to call the registry office and get them fixed, which will cost them less money, legal fees at the end of the day when the property is at conveyance and it sells. Were you going to say something, Michael?
The other thing you probably want to look for is restrictive and protective covenants, easements from utility companies, and the list goes on, but your lawyer will make you aware of that.
Yeah, and that's something, again, that is all on whether it's Schedule A or Schedule B. Legal use or zoning problems. Sometimes sellers' use of a property doesn't comply with the zoning bylaws. Maybe they set up a store in their basement, for example.
You ran into this with a swimming pool the other day.
Yes, I did. The property disclosure statement said that the pool, they didn't know that whether or not all building permits were applied for this pool. The funny twist to this story was they were the builders, the developers of this property. So it turned out that they didn't actually apply for the swimming pool permit. They just went ahead and did this, and they ended up having to go down and start the process to apply for a building permit for this pool that is already there and in place, but just to make sure that the buyer isn't left with the visit from the province saying this didn't exist or it shouldn't have existed because there is no permit application for it. And then mistakes with public records, which I kind of did cover a little bit with regards to names and maybe things like property line issues and things like that.
Is that it?
Well, yes, I would say so.
I'll toss that in the back seat. On the last episode, you made a statement. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You basically said most homes in Prince Edward Island are about 2,500 square feet.
You live to try to find errors in my statements. So yes, I do believe I said that, Michael. Go for it.
And I laughed like a giddy schoolgirl, knowing full well, and I said, and I made an error too, I said 95% of the houses in PEI are not over 2,500 square feet. I stand corrected. I ran the stats. I did this for Charlottetown. I wasn't going to do 50 different reports, but I ran this for the city of Charlottetown. And in the city of Charlottetown, which is our largest city, 85.4% are under 2,500 square feet.
Okay.
The point I'm making is I've looked for bigger houses. I've had clients look for bigger houses. Your clients recently were looking for a bigger house. And I said to you, you're going to have a hard time finding a house that's 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square feet. This isn't Malibu.
Correct.
Or Beverly Hills. So that's the stats. The medium, which I guessed the median square footage was probably 1,800 square feet was my guess. What would yours be?
Well, I know you actually said the average home is probably around 1,300 or
No, I've never
something.
said that. You're thinking about another podcaster.
No.
Must be another podcaster on somewhere.
Yeah, I would have said, now I'm saying average? If I'm looking at the main living area
Charlottetown.
in Charlottetown, I would have to say about 1,600 to 1,800, somewhere in there.
Is it 16 or 18?
I still feel. No, I would probably end up saying closer to 16 to 1,800.
What's your number? You could pick one number. It's like your speedometer in your car. What does it say?
Yeah, around 1,600.
You would be incorrect once again.
Yes, I
My
know.
guess of 1,800 was closer, so I get the happy face sticker
Good for you.
and the silver star.
I am so happy. Are you going to wear it all day?
1,858 is the average square feet based on this report that I ran. I think I ran I ran from January 1st, 2024 to present.
That's because you didn't include 2023's numbers.
Which we weren't including.
Okay.
So I think that's all we're going to cover today.
Thanks again for listening
because we're tired and have to go now.
Another episode of the Michael and Patty Show, otherwise known as MAPS, PEI's podcast that helps guide and navigate you through the buying and selling and a little bit of Prince Edward Island. We appreciate each and every one of you for downloading and listening. And just with regards to the private Facebook group, Moving to Prince Edward Island, we do have a Toolbox Tuesday that's also featured every Tuesday. And the one that I just wanted to feature and mention this week is all about plumbing and the different kinds of piping. And there's pictures that you would be able to take a look to educate yourself to know what am I looking for. So that, again, this is all about education and making sure that you're well informed and serviced.
The biggest one would be Kitec, Kitec, and the other one, which you don't really see a lot of these days. However, my brother in Ontario seemed to have found one and only had to sign 800 pages of disclaimers, is lead. I think he was looking for lead with asbestos insulation, but he couldn't find it.
That's pretty funny. Thanks
Have a good
for
day.
listening.
That's it. It's over.
It's over. Goodbye.